Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over the Trijicon AccuPower 1x4 scope. Now this one here is a departure from what Trijicon's done in the past. In the past they've always had sort of dual illuminated scopes or tritium powered scopes, things like that. So first off, whenever this was announced, people were automatically saying, well, what's the difference between the AccuPower and the AccuPoint? Well, couple big ones. So the AccuPoint, which is a very good scope, by the way, by all means, not dogging it, it's awesome. That one's going to be a little bit more expensive. The AccuPoints also run on dual illumination, so they have fiber optic illumination to use the ambient light, and they also have the tritium insert in there, so it's going to give you, no battery in there, and it's going to run for anywhere between 10 to 15 years and have power. Those are good things for sure. The downside of that is that with the tritium powered optic in low light situations, this one's certainly going to be brighter. So if you're using it with like a weapon light or something like that, the AccuPoint might not be as bright as what you'd need. This one can be very, very bright, obviously with the LED power and going up to setting 11, if you will. So that's the advantage of this one, if there is an advantage, I would say. I've also held them back to back, and this is a newer design. I think, my opinion now, I think the glass on this one is better. I'm not sure if it's just the updated technology that goes along with it or what, but to me, to my eye, it looked a little bit more clear than what you saw on the AccuPoint. So those are the big differences, but we're going to get into all the different specs, the reticles, the controls, all that stuff after we do a little bit more shooting, coming up next. We'll go over the components first and then some of the details on them. On the end here we have the focus ring. What that does is allow you to focus your eye to the reticle, not so much what you see downrange. That will be clear, so don't worry too much about that, but it allows you to get that reticle nice and sharp on there for your eye settings and your eye vision, I should say. We have the adjustment knob here. It's got a nice raised piece off there, very easy to grab onto. You don't need to actually grab it. You can just kind of hit it with your hand, move over. One thing that's really nice about this scope versus some other options out there on the market is that the actual adjusting is extremely smooth. When you get to the end, though, it has a nice click. If I shut up, we might be able to hear it. So you can hear it impact. You know you're on that setting. You can get back on the scope and start sending rounds down range. Here we have our elevation adjustment turrets, our windage turret, and you can see there they're 1/4 MOA adjustments, which is really nice on a 1x4 scope. A lot of 1x4s are going to have half MOA adjustments, so it allows you to dial it in and be even more precise than some of the other offerings out there would allow. Yeah, you can see it's marked which direction it's going to move it, so that way when you're zeroing, there's no confusion there at all. And a nice thing about it is it allows you to dial your zero in and then pull up on the turrets. I can actually do it here on camera. Just move it to where it's at your 0 point. You can set it there, push it down in, and then you have your basically a zero stop. It's not going to actually be a stop, but you'll know where to come back to if you're holding over or dialing in windage. So that's certainly nice. While we're going over that, the actual adjustments themselves are very positive, and there's absolutely no slop or play in them like you could see on some budget scopes. So when you actually are dialing in, I'll be quiet again and see if the camera will actually pick it up. And there's no play at all. There's no wiggle room. There's no half clicks. There's none of that stuff in there. It's very, very solid, very positive, both on the windage and elevation. If there's one thing I'd change about the scope, I would make it so that the turrets were uncapped. Not a huge deal in a 1x4 scope because certainly you're not going to be dialing a lot in, but it's just a personal preference. I like the ability to sort of adjust on the fly. But again, not a huge deal at all, particularly if you have the mil or MOA reticle like we have here, because it already has the holdover, so you can calculate in through the reticle itself. So Not too big of a deal, just personal preference, I suppose. The power here, it goes from settings 1 to 11. And one thing I really like about it is that there's an in-between setting. So as we have it here, if you can take a look at that, you'll see it is on the sort of 9.5 setting, but what it is, that setting is off. So I can instantly go to whatever setting I want it on. So if you're using this for home defense setup, for instance, and you have like a brighter light, let's say you have like a 500 lumen light with a really high amount of candela, you can set it so that way when you go to turn it on, you just hit 10. The reticle is very bright, and it's not going to wash out with your flashlight. Now, if you're used to maybe out hunting and walking around, and you're in sort of low light conditions but not dark conditions, you can move it down here to say like 5.5, and then as soon as you need to use your scope, pop it on 6. You don't have to work all the way through 1 through 11 to get to whatever setting you're at. In that brightness setting knob is your battery. So the battery there is a very common CR2032 battery. You can get them like on Amazon in like bulk packs, really cheap. So it's a good battery. It's lithium quality, so it's going to do well in cold conditions, better than alkaline wood anyway, and very readily replaceable and relatively inexpensive. What you're looking at right now is the reticle on 1 power. Now it's not illuminated as you currently see it. We're going to turn the illumination on and let you guys see what that looks like. Probably a little better to see against the flag background, but during the day, as you can see, it certainly is daylight visible. At night, when the flag gets a little blacker there and blowing in the wind, you may be able to see what it looks like a little bit at night with that darker background. So that's what it looks like. This is on 1 power, and again, we're going to go across the street there with 4 power, and obviously the scope, the eye relief here is going to be a little crazy with the camera, but in real life, I can assure you there's not an eye relief issue. So that's what it looks like there. The illumination right now is on 9, just to let you know, and you can just turn it off and get back to the clear reticle if you want to. So that's what it looks like. And I assure you guys the eye relief, again, in real life is not a problem, but I know it's a little hard to see the readout there with this camera for whatever reason, but there's the weight of it. You can see it's at 1.02 ounces, so really right at 16 ounces on the dot. Now, just to show you a competitive option out there, one that's a little bit more budget-minded that people always reference, and I have reviewed here previously on the channel as well, is the Bushnell AR Optics. And you can see it's a couple ounces heavier there for sure, so it's definitely going to be one of the more lightweight 1x4 options out there. The reticle that you were just looking at is the MOA reticle. Now they also have a mil dot based reticle and also a couple other ones there. Some of them are designed sort of to draw your eye to a larger center dot. Some of them are to keep it simple, like a duplex type system. It really just is user preference at that point. But I like the MOA and the mil dot systems. Those are my personal preference. A lot of you out there will probably like the bullet drop compensators. So it's really just user preference at that point. But the good news is they have several different reticles available. There's just a couple other things I wanted to touch on here. First off is going to be the battery life. I know out there when these were announced, a lot of people were real upset because the rated battery life of it was 31 hours. Now, a few things to keep in mind. It's 31 hours on max setting. So who really uses the max setting? I haven't used it at all, and you guys have seen I've been out there in bright sunlight shooting, so I don't know when the need for that would be, but for what it's worth, that's what it is. I left this one on for 3 weeks trying to test the battery life on setting number 6. It's still going strong. The battery that I did that with is the same one that you've seen throughout the review here, so you can see it's still working just fine. Not sure how long it would last in that setting, but if you do like leave it on overnight or something when you come home from the range, it's not going to be dead unless you have it on max setting and you've already used it for a while or something like that. So that's sort of the battery issue there, if you will. It is waterproof, I believe, down to 10 feet, so you can completely submerge it, and you're not going to have an issue there. Obviously, it's nitrogen purged, as you expect from Trijicon, and it's held zero perfectly fine. This thing has been knocked over like 4 times in my garage because I always set my my rifles up next to my car and lean them on my car when I get ready to load my car to go to the range. And this particular one has fallen over several times, which accounts for the scuffing and dents that you see on it, at least the turret and then up here on the front. That's where that came from, and it's held zero without issue there. So certainly durable, at least as durable as what I'm going to put it through anyway, and probably a lot more than that. So price-wise, these come to market, at least over at Georgia Optics where we picked that up. I'll put a link below for those of you guys looking for it. I think it was $765 for this one. So expensive, yes, compared to some of the other ones out there, but the glass on this is the best of any 1x4 that I've seen to date. And I know that's kind of a bold statement. I haven't used any of the $3,000 optics that are out there in 1x4, some of the Schmidt and Benders and stuff like that. But from everything I've owned, this is certainly the best. Now, when I was doing a rifle accuracy test a few weeks ago, I actually used this scope, and you guys will see it in the coming months here on the channel. And typically I wouldn't do that with 1x4 scope, but you're kind of pushing it at 100 yards in terms of trying to make small holes in paper. But with this one, with the clarity of it, with the fine reticle in the second focal plane, I should note, is something that is an advantage if you're shooting at distance, in my opinion, because it will keep your reticles finer. Just something to keep in mind for you, and the reticle will remain the same size regardless of what setting you have it on. So another thing, if you're talking about an HD rifle, having that second focal plane reticle will keep the reticle relatively large in a home defense type scenario. So that's kind of an advantage there, in my opinion, as well. The only sort of disadvantage to that is if you're ranging using a reticle, either MOA or mil reticle, you're going to have to make sure you do it in the second focal plane when it's all the way out. I should say, not in the second focal plane, when it's all the way out at max magnification. So that's the only sort of downside of it, but all around for this type of magnification, I think the second focal point is probably the way to go. Really think that's just about it. One other thing I should note is that the folks over there at Georgia Optics do say if you find a lower price, let them know, and they'll do something about it. So that's the case there. But like I said, $765 over there, and the link will be in the video description. If you guys have any questions about this scope that I didn't cover here in the video, by all means, please post below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page as always. But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing, and hope to see you in the next video.